Welcome to Heat Checks and Hail Marys. This is Mike Cagley. Football is coming. That's the number one thing that we can think of right now for the sports calendar. I know people are really focused on the Olympics. I'm more of a football guy, so I'll watch a little bit of boxing, watch a little bit of basketball, but have my eye on football practice that's going on across the nation, both for colleges and for, of course, the National Football League. At the same time, we have House settlement talks. We have ESPN and ACC contract rumors and what that means for Florida State and for Clemson. It is an exciting time, and it's also a time of anticipation. Just got done with SummerSlam, so now it's the Olympics, and just on the other side, we have kickoff coming the weekend before Labor Day. Should be an exciting month. Let's talk about the Heat Checks and Hail Marys. Let's go to Heat Check and Hail Mary number one. 5 big things to watch for Big Ten football in 2024. Of course, the biggest story, I know it's tough for a lot of people, but the 4 newbies to the Big Ten, Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA, how bumpy is their ride going to be in the Big Ten, and how hard will the transition be for these 4 schools? Now, the real interesting thing is I wanted to look at Penn State and Nebraska for a template for how these things could look. Ironically, the first meeting of Penn State having a discussion about joining the Big Ten was actually in the spring of 1989, where Joe Paterno and a few others representing Penn State flew to Champaign, and they met with the president of the University of Illinois, Stanley Eikenberry, to discuss the possibility of joining. And of course, in 1993, that became reality. Now, since 1993, Penn State has won 4 Big Ten titles: 1995, 05, 08, and 2016. They haven't won any national titles, though, in football, and they had won 2 in 82 and 86 prior to joining the Big Ten. Additionally, Penn State has not made the CFP since that started in the 2014 and 2015 season. So it's been a good road for Penn State, but it hasn't been quite as good as Penn State boosters probably would have expected it when they joined the Big Ten, and probably thought they were going to be on relatively even footing with Ohio State and Michigan. That's not easy to accomplish. Of course, Nebraska entered in 2011. It's been a lot tougher for them. That program in football won 5 national titles from 1970 to 1997. Since entering the Big Ten, they've only won 1 division title. That was in 2012. And they fired Bo Pelini, the coach who did that, in November of 2014. And they've only had 1 9-game winning season since then. That's definitely not what Nebraska was looking for when they jumped into the league. So you can see that this going into the Big Ten is not something that is oh, this is easy, we're going to do fantastic. When you look at the 4 schools, though, Oregon is on a major roll under Dan Lanning. They may be the one team that can actually beat Ohio State, at least this year. And Ohio State's so loaded that former national champion coaches Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer had comments similar as to, this team has more talent than any team I've seen at Ohio State. So that's probably a huge thank you from Coach Ryan Day, saying, hey, guys, I appreciate that. If we could ratchet up the expectations even higher, that'd be great, especially when he's coming off his 3rd loss to Michigan in a row. UCLA had former head coach Chip Kelly take a job as the Ohio State Buckeyes offensive coordinator. Now, that meant they hired Deshaun Foster, who doesn't have any experience as a head coach, but he has won his players over. In talking with Matt Stevens, the voice of UCLA, he was very positive on the effects Coach Foster has had on the team. Now, that is also balanced against a lackluster media performance at the Big Ten Media Days. Now we are all aware, those people who did not know that UCLA was in Los Angeles, we now know that, thanks to Coach Foster. He had a rough day there. Bottom line, though, It doesn't really matter what happens at a media days, but he'll be hearing about that all the time. And it could either be a really funny joke if UCLA is very successful, or it could be a precursor to doom if things don't work out for Coach Foster and the Bruins. USC has Lincoln Riley. He came from Oklahoma, brought Caleb Williams with him. But the team has disappointed despite having the number one pick in the 2024 NFL draft in Caleb Williams. And people are looking for Coach Riley to have a team that actually plays defense. If you get into the Big Ten and you can't stop other teams a couple times a game, that's going to be problematic. And if you can't stop teams, period, it's going to be tough. So it will be interesting to see what happens between their defensive challenges and what happens when they get into the Big Ten, because that could be very detrimental. Washington, coming off of a national championship loss to Michigan, but they had to replace Coach Kalen DeBoer, who went down to Alabama and then literally saved the recruiting class and brought in an incredible amount of talent, even as Nick Saban left and some Tide were jumping ship. Now we have Jed Frisch, who's fresh off of 3 years at Arizona, and he's taking over the Huskies, but he did take Arizona to a 10-3 record and a number 11 ranking last year, which is the highest in over 2 decades. So those 4 teams will be trying to figure out the Big Ten, and to the fairness of those 4 teams, the Big Ten will be trying to figure out those new matchups, which leads me into the second big thing I'll be looking at this year, and that's the new matchups that we can watch. Oregon will play at home versus Ohio State, which could be the game of the year, probably be up there battling Ohio State and Michigan. And of course, Oregon will also be on the road at Michigan and on the road at Wisconsin. Those are 3 must tune in games. Going to be fantastic to see how the Ducks handle that. UCLA will travel to Penn State. They will get a travel to Iowa, get a chance to see the wave, which is probably the coolest tradition of anything going. When you see them wave at the kids at the Children's Hospital, it is fantastic. And of course, UCLA, it's not a Big Ten game, but they are going to LSU in the non-conference. You talk about a tough game to play. USC, we get to see USC go to Michigan. That will be a great game, something that hasn't happened more than a couple times. Just interesting to watch the USC Trojans visit the Michigan Wolverines. And Wisconsin and Penn State will be coming in to visit the Trojans. That will be a lot of fun too. So again, some big games there. And Washington, they'll be hosting the Wolverines, and they too will be traveling out to Iowa and out to Penn State. So we're going to see some marquee matchups that will jump off the schedule. And I think those will be a ton of fun. The third thing I'm watching here in the Big Ten is Michigan, because there's never a dull day in Ann Arbor, at least since Jim Harbaugh came back. And of course, now he's out in LA in the NFL, but it's still a lot of his organization. And Jim doesn't work quiet, and Jim doesn't work boring. So this year will be no difference. What will the sanctions be from the NCAA? There's an early draft that's circulating out there that makes it sound like new head coach Sharon Moore is one of 7 members of the 2023 Michigan National Championship program accused of violating NCAA rules. Connor Stallions and his effort to capture the play calling signals of opponents may cost the Wolverines more than the price that Jim Harbaugh paid last season. We don't know. You have Ohio State fans who are wanting the death penalty. They want all sorts of things. You have Michigan fans who try to act like knowing what the play is no big deal. I'm assuming the sanctions will be somewhere in between. But in this era that we are in right now, where you have so much turnover every season, whether it's guys going pro, guys going into the transfer portal, so many of these players won't be there. Probably a third of the team wasn't there when these things happened. I don't know how you do that and make it fair on the players. It is a real challenge for the NCAA to try to figure that out. I guess the other thing you could do is take away the national title. But once you win it on the field, Can you really take it away? Does anybody really say that Louisville didn't win the 2013 national championship in basketball? Ironically, they beat the Michigan Wolverines that year. And I'm sure Michigan fans didn't lose any tears when Louisville got stripped of the title. Who knows what'll happen with this one? But I will say that the staff has a talented team there, despite the 13 people who were picked in the NFL draft. They can use the us against the world to motivate a very talented Michigan team that, in my opinion, right now is being slightly overlooked as everybody looks to Ohio State and Oregon as the leaders of the Big Ten, followed by Penn State. And you're not hearing anything at all about the defending national champions. I think Coach Moore can get some motivational hay out of that. And can Coach Moore maintain that chip on the shoulder mentality that's allowed Michigan to effectively win battles on the offensive and defensive line when they metaphorically punch people in the face in the first play of the game and say, this is going to happen to you all game. You can't stop us. I don't know that I would be willing to overlook Michigan as being a contender for the CFP, but that's why they play the games. The fourth thing I'm going to be looking at in the Big Ten is Ohio State and Ryan Day. Ryan Day is under tremendous pressure to beat Michigan. His Ohio State teams have lost 3 in a row to the Wolverines. All 3 times, Ohio State was the number 2 team in the country, and they've lost 2 of the last 3 in Ann Arbor. Now, the last coach for Ohio State to lose to Michigan 3 straight times was John Cooper. He did that in 95, 96, and 97. Ironically, Coach Cooper is also the last Ohio State coach who lost 4 times in a row to Michigan. He did that in 88, 89, 90, and 91. Cooper finished his career a paltry 2-10-1 against Michigan. Here's what's eerie. In 93, 95, and 96, Ohio State entered the game undefeated only to lose to Michigan. That sounds a little familiar. A little too familiar. The moral to the story is no Ohio State coach wants to be compared to John Cooper when it comes to talking about Michigan and Ohio State games. Ryan Day needs to beat Michigan. And Ohio State fans expect this team to make it to the CFP. And to be honest, the ones I talk to expect to make it all the way to the CFP title game. If the Big Ten was the old Big Ten, that would be one thing. You would say Michigan could be down this year. We got to beat Penn State. But with Oregon coming into the league, Michigan having this potential chip on the shoulder, you've got Penn State who's playing well. USC is coming into the league. Iowa has a very favorable schedule this year. It is really hard to know what's going to happen, and it's certainly not automatic for the Buckeyes. But Ryan Day needs to beat Michigan. Number 5, will James Franklin take the Nittany Lions to the CFP? College football playoff has been something that the Nittany Lions have never played in while it's at the 4-team level. Even though they won the Big Ten in 2016, they still didn't make it into the CFP. But here's the interesting thing. If the 12-team tournament existed in that time frame, Penn State's CFP rankings would have seen them in the tournament 6 times, including both of the last 2 seasons. Franklin's done an admirable job at Penn State. But no matter what he has done, they still are looking up at Ohio State and Michigan. What if the Nittany Lions miss the CFP in this new 12-team format? Well, they have a chance to make it. And once you're in, talent and timely luck can make any of the teams in the tournament a title winner. But if Penn State doesn't make it, will Penn State boosters decide this is time to get a new coach? That's the magic question. The new Big Ten makes it both easier and harder to make it to the CFP. Without divisions, the Nittany Lions won't have to look up at the Buckeyes and Wolverines all year long. And this year in the schedule, they don't even play Michigan, but they still have to play the Buckeyes. And now they have to play USC and Washington, along with other Big Ten powers such as Wisconsin. So nothing's going to come easy for Coach Franklin, but he has the ability to jump into the CFP. If he doesn't, will the boosters be restless? That's what I'm going to be watching. Let's take a look at Heat Check and Hail Mary number 2. 5 big things to watch in Illini football in 2024. The first one is Luke Altmaier. Obviously, the quarterback runs the team. Illinois has the benefit for the first time in quite some time to have a returning head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and quarterback 2 seasons in a row. For many programs, this is an annual thing, not at Illinois. So this is a very good thing, and Luke Altmaier really needs to improve his touchdown to interception rate. The key to that is improving the offensive line, which looks like under Brett Bielema has been getting better each year. This looks like the strongest offensive line that he's had at Illinois. Altmaier needs less times that he drops back to pass that he's pressured. No quarterback improves their stats when they're under pressure. The Illini have talented wide receivers and tight ends. They have guys who can catch the ball. The offensive line must give Altmaier the time to get the ball out there, and Altmaier must get the ball where they can catch it. The second thing I'm looking for in Illinois football is Gabe Yakas. Of course, many people recognize him from being on the IlliniGuys Sports Spectacular each week last season. Gabe has gotten bigger and stronger, and you know what? He's going to need it. Because whether it's fair or not, the law firm of Newton and Randolph, they're in the NFL. Gabe is going to get even more attention from opposing offensive lines. Can he improve upon the 4 sacks he's gotten each of his first 2 years? Despite the additional double teams that he will see this season, he must improve in that. This will be critical for the defense. Much of the defensive line is untested, and the defensive backfield cannot play the man-to-man defense that Aaron Henry prefers. They can't do that forever, which means the quarterback has to be under pressure, which means Gabe Yakas has to do 2 things. He probably has to draw a double team, and he has to still pressure the quarterback. We'll have to be watching that. The third duo that I'm going to be watching is Josh McCray and Caden Fagan. These are 2 of the most imposing tailbacks the University of Illinois has ever had. Josh McCray is a physical beast. He looks like he belongs on Ron Zook's massive 2007 Rose Bowl team. But the last 2 years, he's only played in 4 and 5 games due to injury. Now, I want to be clear, nobody blames a player for getting hurt. Sometimes it's just a good old-fashioned bad luck. But Illini fans need to hope that in 2024, one of Josh's abilities that is on display each week is his availability. Because if he returns to his freshman form where he had 549 yards and 4.9 yards a carry, it would do wonders for this year's team. And if you think Josh looks intimidating, Caden Fagan looks downright fearsome. At 6'3" and 250 pounds, he gives off the appearance that someone has asked Lawrence Taylor to decide to play running back. Caden had his freshman season cut short by injury, but he was on a roll. The last 3 complete games before he was injured, he had 84, 97, and 89 yards rushing, with 2 rushing TDs and a receiving TD. With 438 yards rushing at 4.6 yards a carry, and everything was on an upward trend, one wonders what he can do with a full year healthy. If those 2 are both healthy, the Illini will have a thunder and thunder backfield. And we haven't even talked about Aiden Lowry yet. This could be a special year for the Illini backfield. But as we brought up in point number 1, talking about Luke Altmaier. The offensive line will have a ton to do with the success of the offense. And if they run block the way a Brett Bielema line run blocks, they won't grab a lot of the headlines, but the Illini will grab a lot of yards and a lot of scoring. Number four thing that I'll be watching is the defensive line. Let's be really honest here. The Illini defensive line has not been the strongest area of recruiting. I'm constantly surprised by the fact that kids who are looking to play college ball don't look at the past accomplishments of Brett Bielema, defensive lineman, and say, you know what, I'm going to go there and be developed by this guy because he knows how to develop defensive linemen. So this defensive line has to play above expectation levels, and they need to remain healthy. This is probably the biggest difference between Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. They have players that are stacked up behind the starters, and there's not a huge drop. Maybe there's a drop in experience, but not in talent. Illinois needs to find a way to stay healthy. In any event, Briggs, Edwards, Bray, Farrell, Hunt, Warren, Turk, Sledge, and Holmes, they're going to have a bit of a baptism by fire in this new divisionless Big Ten. There's not much else to say. They're going to have to play well. And if someone's injured, someone has to step up. And to keep people fresh in the fourth quarter so you don't have Wisconsin-style collapses, players have to get in and be able to play to give others breathers, and you can't have a drop-off. That is going to be very hard to do, but for the defense to do well, this defense has to stop the run, or at least make sure there's additional blockers dedicated to stopping the defensive line in run situations, and they have to pressure the quarterback. It's really easy to say and really hard to do, but if Illinois does those two things, they will go to a bowl this season, and they'll win at least 8 games. Finally, the number 5 is, will Barry Lunney Jr., the Illini offensive coordinator, have the freedom to go off script like he did the last few games of last season when the Illini flipped and became a much better passing team than anyone thought they'd be. The offensive line should be better this season. Luke Altmaier has worked hard both physically and mentally to improve. Matt Stevens wrote an article about that on IlliniGuys.com, and Altmaier has dedicated himself to getting better and being better prepared for the season. The wide receivers are better. They need to stay healthy, but signing Franklin is huge. Getting Pat Bryant back is huge. You have talent at backup positions. Malik Elzy looks fantastic. There is talent at the wide receiver position. The tight ends have the ability to catch the ball, and the running backs look fearsome. There's no excuse for this team not to be creative, not to use different ways to score, and they have to be unpredictable. It can't just be first down, we always run, third down, we always pass the ball. Barry Lunney Jr. needs to have the creative freedom to keep teams off balance, because if teams are off balance and you have talented players, that's when you score a lot of points. And make no mistake, time of possession is nice. Piling up yards is nice, but they need to score touchdowns, not field goals. This season may require the offense to outscore teams. Give Lunney the opportunity to do that with a very good set of tools that the Illini staff has put together on the offensive side of the ball. Now we go to Heat Check and Hail Mary number 3. We're going to talk a couple minutes here about Deadpool and Wolverine, which is a fantastic movie. Now, I'm going to have to give you a caveat on that. If you decide to go see the movie based on this, which I don't think is going to happen very often, but if it does, remember, this movie is bloody. It's pretty gross in both humor and sight gags, and it has just horrible language. Now, If you have no issues with that, then head out to the theater because you will not be disappointed. Ryan Reynolds is a creative genius. And I can only imagine that people who are in Hollywood, if they have the opportunity to work for him, I don't know why you would ever turn down that call. I might even, if I was under contract to be at a movie, I might just say, you know what? I'm taking a sick day. I don't care if it costs me $10,000. If I can do a cameo in a Ryan Reynolds movie, I'm going to be there. So, Ryan, if you're watching this, I'm available. Now it's time for spoiler alerts. If you haven't seen it yet, here's going to be a few spoilers. So, if you're going to go, you stop listening. If you've already been, then you'll have to see if you agree with me. First thing there are some incredible cameos to look for. I'm going to list a few of them that I liked. Henry Cavill was fantastic. Now, I liked his Superman character as him playing it. I thought he had to deal with some of the worst written Superman characters, but I thought he did a great job with what he was given. So having him in this was fun. I thought the throwback usage of Chris Evans, particularly his scene at the end of the movie in the credits, was spectacular. Chris Evans can act. The guy is not just Captain America, he can do other things. And he was fantastic in this throwback role. I also thought the comic height Wolverine was hilarious. Now, Hugh Jackman's around 6'2". In the comic books, Wolverine's really 5'3". So there's just one scene where they show Wolverine at that height. It was fantastic. Well worth watching. We also got to see Hulk versus Wolverine. Now, many people don't realize the first time that Wolverine ever appeared in comic books was in the pages of The Incredible Hulk. And so they had a little throwback to that. Fantastic. Or maybe I should say incredible. They also had innovative use of the 20th Century Fox logo. 20th Century Fox used to own the X-Men and the Fantastic Four rights. So those movies were made by 20th Century Fox, not really Marvel Productions. So they have a great usage of that logo in the movie. Just be looking for it. It was pretty cool. We also got to see John Byrne's brown Wolverine costume on Hugh Jackman. Byrne is arguably the best comic book writer artist of all time. There's a ton of comic book writers and there's a ton of comic book artists, and there's a few of them who are extremely talented. Jack Kirby, Walt Simonson, and others who can do both the writing and the artwork. And Byrne is my favorite of all time. And this was his Wolverine costume. It was spectacular as well. And trust me, there's a lot of other ones. I don't want to ruin them for you, but you have to keep your eyes out because there's cameo after cameo, or there's little Easter eggs throughout the movie that you can look for. Now, one of the arguments that you hear at the end of the movie is Deadpool and Wolverine are technically not part of what they call the sacred Marvel timeline. Now, for those people who watch Marvel movies, if you're watching the Marvel ones made by Disney, those movies happen on Earth number 616. Now, that just happens to be the number that they use for the real Marvel that we're watching in the movies. That's called the sacred timeline because it's the original. It appears that Deadpool and Wolverine are still back in their offshoot universe at the end of the movies. I think that's the way it's going to be. Some people say, well, then you wasted our time because you didn't bring them into the Marvel universe. I don't think that was the point of what Marvel was trying to do. It seems to me that Marvel was trying to accomplish with this movie was trying to reinforce what a multiverse is. It's been talked about in other movies. And obviously we had Avengers Endgame, you had Doctor Strange. What happens when time travel creates other timelines has been a bit hazy. Endgame talked about it a little bit. And I think what they were trying to do was basically fold in the multiverse with the time variance authority. And by introducing the time variance authority, these are the people who monitor time travel and then the resulting timelines that happen when you change time. It helps your general viewer understand the implications of time travel. Now, the Time Variance Authority, or TVA, was introduced in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show, which like nobody watched. Okay. So nobody knows about it. And then it became the feature of two Loki series on Disney in 2021 and 2023. It's well worth, if you're going to subscribe to Disney, watch those two series first, because they really are the basis for a lot of the things that are happening in the Marvel universe on the screen right now. But I think the Time Variance Authority and their function to monitor various timelines and even prune timelines if those timelines are too dangerous to the rest of the multiverse. I think understanding what they do is really important for understanding the alternate realities that we're seeing in the movies. And since nobody watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and probably a smaller number of people subscribed to Disney's streaming service, this is what I thought a big part of Deadpool and Wolverine was to introduce this to the general populace in a huge movie. And of course, Deadpool and Wolverine, with their numbers in terms of tickets sold, that is a great idea to make it a little bit more understandable for people who are very casual fans. And the neat thing they did is in Deadpool and Wolverine is they did it in a show don't tell fashion that was both explanatory for what the TVA does and fun to watch. That's much better than a 20-minute exposition where two characters talk to one another and fill everybody in on it. That's the dreaded tell, don't show that makes for really boring movies. So I think they were trying to introduce people to that multiverse, timelines, and what happens when you go back in time and screw with stuff, and how there's different realities. This also opens the door for more Deadpool and Wolverine adventures, whether they're in their own reality, which is called Earth 10,005. That's essentially the Fox movie universe, or whether later on we'll understand how they pulled them in to the Marvel universe, because this movie gave us the foundation for that. And a huge tip of the hat has to go to artist Walt Simonson, who was one of those gentlemen I talked about as a writer artist. He created the TVA, and it came out in October 1986 in a Thor comic, number 372, for those of you who collect. He set this up and he invented the TVA, and it started monitoring the Marvel universe all those years ago. And then someone astutely decided to bring it into the movies to help create some order out of the chaos. This same feature was mirrored a little bit by Star Trek when they did their Department of Temporal Investigations, which came out in November of 1996 when Deep Space Nine with Commander Captain Sisko went back in time, and they were dumped into the original series Trouble with Tribbles episode. And you got to see two Star Trek crews back and forth with one another using special effects. And you will see the Department of Temporal Investigations in future Star Trek on your Paramount Plus app. Walt Simonson may not have invented this, but his thoughts and premises have had a huge influence in pop culture. All in all, Deadpool and Wolverine, it was an excellent movie. And they've raised the level of breaking the fourth wall when you actually have characters talk to the audience to an art form. And they generally use that to mock the superhero genre in most cases, or decisions made by studio executives in the past. And it's a lot of fun. If you want to go to a movie that's got a lot of laughs, a little bit of gross out, some very good and graphic humor, this is a fantastic movie. Don't take it too seriously, but it is a 4.5 out of 5. Go there, enjoy it, and prepare to laugh. With that, we will see you next time